Alright my friends, welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew, and today I want to talk a little bit more about the 4080 Super versus the 7900 XT and what I discovered in Ghost of Tsushima last night after I had put the 7900 XT back in the PC for some testing. So I was going along in Ghost of Tsushima, and for the most part, everything seemed pretty decent from the get-go. When I first started the overall game, I was running around, and I mean, I was kind of expecting the performance to, at 60 FPS, to be actually. I was expecting it to run significantly better on these cards, because I mean the PS4 Pro was running this game. It looked pretty good. The PlayStation 5, obviously you're getting 4K checkerboard rendering at at freaking 60 FPS. Well, I mean, it was 1800p or 4K or so. I don't remember exactly, but I mean, when you look at like the textures and the overall world and stuff like that, I kind of expected a little bit better performance out of the 4080 Super, and I'm getting my frame rates that are dropping down into the upper 40s. And then going up to like the 67-ish range, 67, 68 FPS range at just native 4K. Whereas the 7900 XT is usually running about 62 frames. I think I've seen it drop once to like 59 frames on the 7900 XT, and then shoot all the way up into the 80s during my experience with that. Now we have to take into consideration that when I'm using shadow play on the Nvidia GPU, that might actually be taking away some of the frame rate, because when I was playing it without that, I was getting at least I think it was about 5 frames more. That's what it seemed like to me. Because I wasn't recording, so I couldn't really do like side by sides or anything. But I do kind of feel like the extra frame rate that I am losing on the Nvidia GPU is due to using the shadow play feature from the Nvidia software to record that footage. That's how I record my footage, and it's always been like that. Every once in a while I'll use what is it, Streamlabs OBS to record footage, but I feel like that kind of takes away more frame rate than I normally lose with just using shadow play. Shadow play gives me a cleaner image quality to upload, so I do that. One day, to me it just kind of seems counterproductive to have 2 full-on PCs to record footage when I'm not a benchmarker, so that just kind of makes no sense whatsoever. But with the AMD card, with an AMD CPU, I'm running a 5900X. Guys, I've said this over and over again on the channel that my AMD system feels very optimized. Like, it feels really good 90% of the time. I don't feel like I'm getting bottlenecked or there's any kind of thing that's like slowing it down. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. Like, this is kind of embarrassing that the 4080 Super is getting outperformed by the 7900 XT, whereas the 7900 XT isn't even. Whereas the 4080 Super is supposed to be competing with the much higher end 7900 XTX. I mean, price and performance wise, that's where those cards should be. But if you really look into it, if you get rid of all the fanboy nonsense, the 4080 Super is essentially on par with the 7900 XT. They both have got 52 T-flops of shader compute, and when you're running these cards head to head in terms of pure rasterized performance, that there's pretty much where these two cards compete. And essentially is what you're getting is with a 7900 XT is 4080 level, is pretty dang good in terms of rasterization. But obviously the 4080 Super definitely has a significant, and I mean this, significant advantage when it comes to ray tracing performance on certain games. Like, it's pretty good. Like, the 4080 Super is really good. Now, this doesn't change my overall recommendation that the 4080 Super is definitely worth owning. I mean, if you're an Nvidia person and you like Nvidia and you just want that extra, you know, that extra power, you know, this is the second strongest in the lineup of the Nvidia GPUs, and I definitely do think in some ways it's worth the money. But then in some ways I think that you'd be better served with an AMD GPU. Especially if you're running an AMD CPU. I kind of feel like it, because I've never tested any of my cards with an Intel CPU, so I'm not going to make that. But what I do see when I utilize the Nvidia card versus the AMD card running on a 5900X or running on an AMD CPU, my AMD cards tend to run better. Now, another thing that is quite confusing to me is both types of frame generation are enabled in Ghost of Tsushima. Now, with the Nvidia side, you get access to, you know, the Nvidia frame generation, and you can use the AMD frame generation. So you can utilize DLSS and frame generation from the AMD side, or you can use DLAA or any of that stuff and still utilize the AMD frame generation, which in my opinion is the superior choice when it comes to this game. Now, when I'm using Nvidia's frame generation or whatever while using Shadowplay, like it ruins the whole image. Like the image gets all stuttery and shaky and stuff like that. But if I flip on the AMD frame generation, all that goes away. It's buttery smooth. It just runs great. And yeah, dude, you can't tell the difference. The frame rate feels significantly better when you're using the AMD frame generation with Ghost of Tsushima. So if you want to use the frame generation, I highly recommend utilizing AMD's version of frame generation. I think you'll find that to be more pleasing while playing this game. It's definitely going to help out a lot more. I'm seeing frame rates go from, you know, the low 60s all the way up, you know, to like the 180s or whatever with that frame generation enabled. So I definitely think that you'd be better served to do that. Now, if you're playing on like a 1440p monitor or something like that, then the 4080 Super knocks it out of the park. You get like double the frame rate almost. Like it's easily in the hundreds, and you're like, wow, dude, that is crazy. But to see it drop so drastically with that enabled. So I want you guys to know, if you take away anything from this video, is that yes, the 4080 Super does do pretty decent at 60-ish frames per second when I'm not recording. It does pretty well. I want you guys to know that and understand that. But when I'm using Shadowplay to record that, it's it's almost like it's taken like 5 FPS away from that overall recording. But then I've also seen those same numbers without when I'm not recording with the 4080 Super as well. So, but it's not as consistently in the 50s when I'm not using the frame generation. So I want you guys to know that. But with the AMD side of things, using, you know, Shadowplay, anything, I'm not losing any performance whatsoever. It's just a nice, smooth experience across the board. So yeah, this is a little bit embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna try to sit here and tell you that it's not embarrassing to see the 4080 Super getting outperformed, because for the most part there are a bunch of games that do outperform it on the 7900 XT, but there's also games that the 4080 Super, you know, definitely outperforms this one. And like I said, man, I think that, you know, saying that the 4080 Super should be competing with the 7900 XT, I kind of find that, at least in my testing in the games that I play, I kind of find that to be a little bit misleading. I kind of feel like, you know, you're getting pretty close performance out of both of these cards. Between a 4080 Super and a 7900 XT. 7900 XTX is kind of like the middle child, man. It's like, you know what? Honestly, I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't have a 4090 and I don't have a 7900 XTX. But if I was comparing cards, those would be the two I'd be going for. So take that however you want to in terms of like this PC stuff. the reason why I do this is because this stuff is expensive, and we just want to play video games, but there's always, I feel like if you can get a better experience for less money, that's a good thing, man. And that's what I'm here to do, is to call out the crap and try to give you guys the best information I can. And to this day, since buying an AMD GPU, I have consistently been blown away with just how good they are for the price. So if you guys like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.